Good day. This is Dr. Battle, and here we are continuing our understanding of wisdom and poetic literature in the Bible. And today we're going to look at specifically the Proverbs, even though this has a little bit of an introduction to both proverbial literature and also poetic literature. But just to kind of let you see where we're going, let's go now and just kind of look at wisdom and poetic literature in general. Wisdom and poetic material uh, is different from narrative, and so if you interpret it as a narrative, straightforward narrative, you will get the imagery wrong. It's in a I remember a song recently about some guy who was singing that if he were to write 1,000 songs, he'd all write them all about his love. And well, most songwriters don't write 1,000 songs, so you know that he's not talking in a straightforward narrative, but that there's a poetic element, or like I would lasso the moon for you. And we have different things like that that happen within poetry that are different from what would normally happen in narrative. The main thing is that when interpreting any form of literature, the knowledgeable interpreter considers the genre of the material. Now, here I am using genre as you would have it in your English classes. Okay, I'm not using it as what we were just talking about under form criticism. So I'm talking about here poetic genre, proverbial genres. They're different from narrative or historical narratives. Now, just to remind you, the primary genres of literature in wisdom and poetic literature are, well, obviously, proverbial literature and poetic literature. So that should, we're not dealing with anything that should be too complicated, but it should be relatively obvious for us. But of course, poetic, well, we call them poetry for a certain reason. Now, let us look at proverbial literature. The first thing you have to understand about proverbial literature is that it is a truism. Now, what a truism is something that is generally true, all things being equal. It's not an absolute truth. It's not an absolute declaration, but it's saying that under normal circumstances, this is true. Under normal circumstances, here in the United States, cars drive on the right-hand side of the road. Well, that's usually true. In fact, that's what the law requires. But there are times when that is not what happens. And so you have to, it's kind of like in the spelling, I before E except after C, and then you have a whole list of other exceptions that come in after that. Normally, a proverb is a short, memorable statement that uses a specific anecdote to express something that is generally true. And so it's usually something that we can remember. Now, those of us who have been around a while and used to sew our own clothes and have to mend them, we know the simple statement, a stitch in time saves 9. Now, younger folks probably don't know what that's referring to because most younger people don't know how to sew and don't know what it means to sew. But the context here is sewing, and what it's talking about is if you get a tear in your clothes or a tear in something, if you fix it soon, fix it right as soon as you notice it, the tear won't get any larger, and so you don't have to spend as much to fix it. So it's a simple proverb from sewing saying that if you do 1 stitch in time, you will not have to spend 9 stitches to fix it later. So it's a proverb telling us to take care of difficulties or take care of a problem before it gets too big. Now another one, again, our culture we're gradually losing the art of proverbs, but another one is if it's too hot in the kitchen for you, then get out. If you can't take, I guess nowadays it'd be if you can't take the heat, leave. If you get involved like in politics and you don't like people making fun of you, you're in the wrong business. That's just the nature of the situation. You just can't, if you're going to be cooking in the kitchen, it's going to get hot. And if you can't stand the heat, then you might as well not be a cook. So if you can't deal with the hard issues of life, then don't put yourself in the middle of it, trying to fix them. Because in certain situations you have to go through a lot of heat, and politicians, by very nature of the job, there's going to be people who always dislike what they're doing, and there's always going to be people making fun of you. There's always going to be people belittling you, and that's just the nature of the business. And if you don't want that to happen to you, then don't get involved in politics. If you don't want to deal with the pressures of leadership, then don't try to become a leader. Don't try to lead. That's the way it is. Another one that comes from Proverbs here is iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Now, back in the day, when you now some of you, with you start every spring before you prepare to cut your lawn, you get under your lawnmower and or you take the blade out from under your lawnmower and you get a file and you sharpen that blade so that it'll cut the grass better. And so what here it says, iron is used to sharpen iron. Well, one man sharpens another. This is very important in academic circles because people who get involved in academic debates are able to make their arguments and make their understandings more precise and accurate and express themselves better as they work with other people, getting feedback on what they're doing. And so oftentimes we have to realize those people who seem hard to us, they're the ones doing us a service by helping us do better. And so these are just general truisms, but that's not always the case, because you can have somebody, there are situations where you could take an iron and start hitting a blade and you can make it duller. There are situations where somebody makes life hard on you, and as a result, you end up being less able to deal with the difficulties of time. A teacher who is too hard destroys the motivation of the students, but a hard teacher is your better teacher because they make you improve more. So, as iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. Now, a proverb typically require contemplation to apply. You just can't apply a proverb, just read it, and today I'm going to apply this proverb. That's why it's a good practice to read through the Proverbs on a regular basis, and you'll often hear it recommended. You'll often hear it recommended that you read a chapter in the book of Proverbs each day. There's 31 Proverbs, so for each day of the month, you can read a specific chapter of Proverbs, and you kind of have to have them in the back of your mind. And here is a proverb to show you why you have to contemplate them in order to apply them. Here you have two proverbs. If you look at one's from Proverbs 26:4, and the other's from Proverbs 26:5. So these are two proverbs that are laid side by side. And the first one says, "Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself." There's certain people that are just foolish, and they're just foolish in what they're doing. And if you try to talk with them or try to reason with them or try to show them why they're foolish, you will suddenly notice that you are becoming just as much of a fool as they are, and you begin looking badly. And so sometimes when you're dealing with people who are just plain being idiotic, it's best to let them be, because if you try to correct them or try to show them a better way, you're going to end up being just as much of a fool as they are. On the other hand, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. But then you may have seen situations where somebody was acting as a fool, and then somebody came up with a equally stupid counter remark, and it made them realize how dumb or how foolish the thing they were about to get involved with. So you have to know sometimes when you're trying to correct a person, you will end up looking just as foolish as they are. Other times, you'll correct them and it'll become obvious that they have done wrong and be able to correct the situation. But how do you know which one to apply and when to apply it? Well, you have to contemplate it and get a sense of what's actually going on in your particular situation. The last thing that I want y'all to realize here, and this is very important, a proverb is not a divine promise. Let me repeat that. A proverb is not a divine promise. A lot of times people take a proverb and they take it as a divine promise, and then they wonder what they did wrong because the proverb did not work out. And probably the classic one that's used as a promise, and it's not, is Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, many people, we know people who are great parents, good people, and they have a child that grows up and the guy is just absolutely evil, and you wonder how in the world did that man come from that family. On the other hand, we also know that there are some people who are great people, and you get to know their parents and you wonder how in the world did such a good guy come out of that family. um, you know, my mother looked at me one day as when I was older and looked and says, you turned out pretty well. We did everything wrong according to the books, but you turned out okay. Um, anyways, trained up a child. Notice what this says, though. If we train up a child, a little one, from the very beginning in the way he should live, training him in right and wrong and training him to make good decisions, when he is older, he won't depart from it. And so what we see here is that as a rule of thumb, as truism, if you have good parenting, as a rule of thumb, good adults will be produced from good parenting. Unfortunately, more often than not, good adults will be produced from good parents. On the other hand, bad adults, wicked adults, will be produced from bad parenting. On the other hand, every individual has a point in their lives where they choose which way they want to go. No matter how good your parenting is, there's always going to be some children who choose to go the wrong way, and there is nothing you can do about it or make any difference there. So, it's not a promise, it's a truism. And you see it more likely than not, if you have good parents, you're going to turn out well. More likely than not. All other things being equal, good parenting will produce good adults. The other proverb we need to remember is a proverb is a truism or something that is generally factual, all other things being equal. I basically said this 3 or 4 times. As a rule of thumb, these things are true. Now, Proverbs, there's many different good Proverbs. There's Poor Richard's Almanac by Benjamin Franklin, who has a lot of good Proverbs in it. They're great things for helping us live, but we have to understand that they are not absolute factual statements. They are generally true, all other things being equal. And so we have to take Proverbs in that sense. Now, the Proverbs that are in the Bible do have divine sanction if you hold that they are canonical literature, but they are not divine promises.